Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scaff. He is Dr. Michael Warman, Esquire. On today's show, we'll eventually get to the NFL's Week 18, probably the most unpredictable of weeks. Not that many of the weeks have been super predictable for us as of late, anyway. We'll talk about the college football playoff that's continuing now. We'll be getting closer to the semifinals coming up here in another week or so. So we'll talk about the quarterfinal games that happened this recently. We'll also talk about the recap of the NFL's Week 17 and a brief baseball story. We're going to talk a little baseball again, Mike. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about, but not since the Juan Soto sweepstakes.
Right.
The Royals were at least inquired about. They weren't really in on it, but
Yeah.
they
They were
were
they
thinking
weren't ruled
about
out.
they thought about it at one point that they might be
Really.
interested in possibly going there, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh well,
it would have been way too expensive, I'm sure, for the Royals' blood.
for sure. Especially how it ended. But
Yeah,
yes, we'll talk a little baseball, but we'll begin today with yes, more unpredictability in the NFL. Uh, we in the last week, week 17, we saw some pretty like wide varieties of games. We saw a 6-3 Seattle Chicago game, and in the same week that we saw a 45-33 Giants Indy game. Uh, we also had three teams scoring 3 points or fewer in a game. But maybe most importantly, we had a team that we're sort of fascinated with uh, safeties in the NFL. We
yeah.
had a team in the Houston Texans managed to only score exactly 2 points in the game. Like, was that the most interesting thing that you think happened in the NFL Week 17?
Well, I like the odd scores, 31 to 2. It's something that has doesn't happen very often. Do you know when the last team to score only exactly 2 points was?
No, I have no clue.
It actually involved the Chiefs um, in 2013. The Chiefs beat Jacksonville 28 to 2. On September 8th, 2013. Uh, they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 28 to 2. That you might remember, I believe that was the first year of um Andy Reid as the head coach,
Oh,
2013. Alex Smith was the quarterback. If I can, my computer's being a little bit slow. If I can go back onto it, it's being slow. Alex Smith was the quarterback. Junior Hemingway was one of the scorers. You remember? I don't know if you remember the illustrious Junior Hemingway, uh, the literary sensation
yes.
who played for the Chiefs. Wide receiver scored a touchdown for Kansas City, as did Donnie Avery.
Wow.
So both of them received had touchdown passes from Alex Smith. Jamal Charles had a 2-yard rushing touchdown, and then
There's a more
Tom
familiar name.
Bahali had an interception return for a touchdown. Those are the four Chiefs touchdowns, 28 to 2.
You're saying that there's an interception in the game. You wouldn't go first to Holly as somebody that would end up with a
No,
return touchdown.
and it was at Jacksonville.
Wow.
It
And that
was
was
the opening week of the 2013 season.
wow. That wasn't a great era for Jacksonville, I don't think in general, though, was it?
Yeah. Besides Alex Smith, two other future Chiefs quarterbacks played in that game. Do you have a clue of who the two other Chiefs quarterbacks
Oh,
were that played in that game?
two other Chiefs quarterbacks played. Wow. Well, it's probably going to be yeah backups that
Hmm.
made appearances, but I is one of them a future Philly Super Bowl
No, not
champion?
Nick Foles. Not Nick Foles.
Okay, that would have been my guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to go with that one then.
Okay,
So
so one was last year's Chiefs backup, Blaine Gabbert, who started the game.
I forgot
Uh,
he was there then. Yeah.
he only he was relieved by
Oh,
the
you mean you played for Jacksonville?
Bevo Jacksonville, yeah,
Yes. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
and the other.
For some reason, I was thinking of yeah, backups like the Chiefs
Uh,
backup would have been in there
well,
when
Chase
that was.
Daniel Chase Daniel did get in. I guess he did get in for a kneel down at the end. So
Okay.
you guess three or four. I guess you would
Yeah.
say four Chiefs played quarterback: Alex Smith, Chase Daniel, uh, Blaine Gabbert, and a playoff hero for the Chiefs.
Hmm. Oh, the year that with Mahomes missed the game. Who was that? Matt Moore?
It wasn't Matt Moore. It was Chad Henne.
Oh, Henny. Henny. Man, I totally forgot about Henny. Yes.
Yeah, Chad
Yeah.
Henne. Um,
Yes. Duh.
but Chad Henne came in, had three for six for 36 yards. Blaine Gabbert was 16 of 35 for 120 yards with two interceptions. Uh, and the
So, well,
interception
how did the safety come to be though? Was that a sack in the end zone or like a punt that was like purposefully thrown out of the end zone?
exactly.
Or
It was a blocked punt out of the end zone.
okay,
So JT punt blocked by JT Thomas. I do not remember JT Thomas at all.
wow,
Um, I wouldn't have guessed if he was the Chiefs, if he was the Jacksonville punter or the Chiefs special teams guy. I don't remember that name at all.
hmm,
Um, but there were, the teams that had the players that had rushing attempts included Jamal Charles, Nile Davis, and Cyrus Gray, Anthony Sherman, Dexter McCluster, Dwayne Bowe, Donnie Avery, Anthony Fasano, and Junior Hemingway all caught passes. So
yes.
it was a
Anthony Fasano, not Sal Fasano.
Anthony Fasano. Yeah, I might remember Anthony Fasano. He played tight end for the Chiefs.
Yes,
Um,
wasn't Sal Fasano
Sal Fasano played catcher for the Royals.
yeah, Royals catcher? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and Anthony Fasano played for Dallas, Miami, two seasons with Kansas City, uh, then finished his career at Tennessee and then Miami again. He played 12 years in the National Football League, Anthony Fasano. So he had a long and fairly successful career as mainly a blocking, kind of middle receiving tight end. Um, Never more than his high in yards was 528 with Miami in 2010. Um, and he had actually those seven touchdowns in his 2 years with the Chiefs as the tight end. So he had pretty
Okay.
good. Um, I did have one more scoring tidbit. Um,
I
we
think we
talked about
mentioned last week, right, that the 31-2 was not a scoregami, right?
it was not a scoregami. It was one of three 31-2 scores, the last of which I think had occurred 1965 or something like that.
Yeah, it
Um,
seems crazy that isn't a unique score.
Yes, but speaking of scorigamis, none of these teams last week were shut out. Uh, Even though three teams scored a field goal or less. Um, so if you, uh, so if we're talking about shutouts, uh, the smallest score where there's been no game that has ended this way is 4-0. Um,
So there
and
was a two. There was a 2-0. No,
Actually, there was no 1-0 either, but that's not
not
really
possible.
possible.
Yeah.
Um, you can't, yeah, because the only way you could score 1 point is on an extra point or on a 2 point conversion attempt
Oh,
that results in a safety. A safety on a 2 point conversion is a one
it's that
point safety.
challenging.
You
Like
can get
somebody
a
would have to
one.
basically do that on
You can get a
purpose.
1 point safety, but you would need a touchdown before that. So a 1-0 score is impossible. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. Um,
All right. But ending with 1 point is possible. Then is what you're saying.
Technically, in some
Yeah.
cases,
But
Yes.
6-0 would be the lowest.
Yes.
1-0, 1 point
Yeah.
allowed
And it
score.
would need to be like for a 1 point safety for the other team, it would need to so like you could score a 1 point safety like as the kicking team, maybe you had your field goal like maybe you had your field goal attempt blocked and then somebody on the receiving team attempts to return it but ends up getting tackled back
Just
in
outside the end zone.
back in the end zone or something like that. That could be a
Yeah.
safety. Or I guess technically, if you're the kicking team, you can have your field attempt blocked or something like that, and then returned, and then bobbled, and then you recover your own ball in the end zone.
You'd have to carry it into the end zone and then be tackled or something
Yeah,
like that.
or like yeah, or it could just be kicked a lot, and you would recover a fumble or something in the end zone and be tackled.
It seems to be more likely that a team would have to like, you know, be trying to make a mockery of the game and like
Yeah,
take a snap and just run it the other way
yeah,
themselves into their own end zone.
yeah,
98 yards away,
yeah.
which would just be making a mockery of the game
That would be
though, right?
making a mockery of the game. So speaking
Baseball
of
baseball would not allow it,
no.
but
But baseball they would allow because they're always making a mockery of the game.
hey,
But
that's like in the rule book and stuff about like you can't run the bases backwards.
some of the I would say some of the new rule changes are making a mockery of the game with
Oh, for sure. But I think the rule book actually has like verbiage that says like
uh
you can't run the bases backwards to make a mockery of the game. Like that is like part of the actual like
I see.
language that's written into the book into like the actual rule book. So they considered it in baseball about like
Yeah.
someone trying to make a mockery of the game and not wanting that to happen.
Yes. So but speaking of shutout scores, I was actually looking at 0-0 scores. There have been 73 0-0 games. When
Early days, I would
when was
assume.
when was the last one?
Ooh,
0-0 tie.
there were probably some. Well, at some point they made the change, right? They had to play to a victory at one point.
Well, they have overtime rules, but you can still tie in the NFL.
Well, I mean, there were different eras of the. Anyway, I would say almost all of them would have been pre-merger,
Hmm.
but there's probably one somewhere in the 80s, maybe. I'll say 86.
You if you divide that by two and not including the
So,
19 in front of
so
it.
all of them were
Yeah.
pre-merger then, is what you're saying.
1943, November 7th,
40s.
1943.
Wow.
The Giants at the Detroit Lions 0-0. But there've been 73 0-0 games. There have been 63-0 games. When was the last 3-0 game?
I'm gonna say that was post-merger, but
Yes.
so if I guess somewhere in the 80s, maybe later even, I'll say 91.
Actually, that happened last
Oh,
season.
jeez.
December 10th, 2023, the Vikings beat the Raiders 3-0.
Wow.
Um, but the question I was going to ask originally was so 4-0 is a impossible has been a would be a score the next scoregami would be 4-0
What's the
if
lowest
somebody
scoregami
scored 4 to
available?
two safeties to win. What is the next highest point value of a shutout that would lead to a scoregami, do you think? So, like,
Hmm.
there've been probably a lot of 21-0 or 28-0 games, something like that.
Right.
What's the lowest number above four that would be a scoregami?
Well, I mean, 5-0 would be a decent guess, actually, because that would be a field
Yeah.
goal and a safety.
There have been three 5-0 games, the last of which occurred in 1978. The Bills beat
Wow.
the Bengals 5-0.
Wow. So that one's off the tip. And then it becomes much easier to score most of the combinations of points. So it's probably going to be relatively high. I'm going to say I'm going to say it's in the 30s to 0. I'll say 30 And pick a weird number too there. 37-0. That'll be my guess. 37-0.
There have been 17 37-0 games.
So not
The
I
last
was
of which was
closer
the
with my
was
5-0 guess than
the
my
last of which was the
37-0.
Dolphins over the Chargers in 2014. The
So is
answer
it over or under the 37 points then?
over 37.
It is over 37. Okay. Wow. Okay. So then now you're getting into like where what point totals are harder to hit, I guess, right? So once you get over that, you're past the 30s.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe it's upper 40s then even. So 42 and 49 would be touchdowns, 6 and 7 touchdowns with extra points.
The
So
Chiefs were the last 49-0 victor over the Cardinals in December 2002.
nice. Maybe
Um,
maybe 47 would be a tougher one to hit anyway. So I'll go with
very
47.
close. There have been four 47-0 games, last of which was 1977. There have been zero 46-0 game.
Oh,
So that would be the next scoregami would be 46-0. Yeah, but the Chiefs defeated the Arizona Cardinals on December 1st, 2002 by the score of 49-0.
oh,
That was the Dick Vermeil era Chiefs with Priest Holmes and Dante Hall, Tony Gonzalez, Trent Green. Uh,
nice.
yeah, that was the Chiefs though. They weren't that they were okay, but they had a bad defense that year. They actually only won that game 49-0. They only got the record up to 6-6 on the year of that 49-0 game. So
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
they finished that season 8-8. They were the number one scoring offense at 29.2 points a game, but the
Yeah,
number 28 scoring defense, and that's how you get to 8-8
right.
record.
Not
Um,
great.
although Pythagorean, they would have been 9.5 to 6.5 was their expected wins record. So
But they were not brightest of teams apparently either.
no, um,
Yeah,
they actually scored 49 points in consecutive games that season. They beat the Cardinals and they beat the Rams 49-10 the week after.
it's impressive.
But they finished the season scoring 0 points at the Oakland Raiders. They lost 24 nothing, and that's what uh, made the cost, which is a little strange. They scored 41, 2, 3, 4 games. They scored at least 40 points
Wow,
that season.
that's quite a change now for the current Chiefs who
Yeah,
I believe not scored 30 points in a game this season. Is that?
they scored 30. They haven't outscored 31. They haven't scored more than
Oh,
30. They scored
okay,
30. They scored 30 twice. Uh,
exactly 30.
I think they beat the Buccaneers maybe 30-27 and maybe beat the um Panthers 30-27, something like that. Um
It's been a really strange season though, hasn't it, for the Chiefs?
it has been a strange season. It's been a
Even though
strange
they were 15-1, but they still
yeah.
yeah, yeah, Panthers 30-27 and
Oh, the Buccaneers 30-24. They won
oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah.
in overtime. So yeah.
So yeah, they haven't scored over 30.
No.
Yes.
But all of their they've yeah. Um they've scored somewhere between all their points, all their games have also been within 14 points of each other. I think the lowest they've scored was 17, and the highest they scored was 30. So all of their games have been bunched in that fairly small window. I wonder if that's uh, a record for the range, the lowest range of scores for an NFL team.
Gotta be it's gotta be in there. Unless there's a team that just was so bad that they like never scored any points like all year.
Yeah, yeah,
If they never
um,
scored over 10 or something the whole season. It could have happened.
yeah,
Out of curiosity though, you're on the scoregami page, Mike.
yes.
how how common is the 2-2 score? Something to two final. Are those is that easily?
Something to two.
Yeah,
There's been no 2-2 game.
sure.
No
What's the
tie.
lowest? What's the lowest to two game?
3-2.
Is that
Uh,
now? If that game was on a replay, would you watch it?
well, they were both from the 1920s. So the first game was the Dayton Triangles versus the Cleveland Indians in 1921. The second game was the Chicago Cardinals against the Milwaukee Badgers in 1926. So two 3-2 games. I don't know if either of those would be very fun.
Well, they wouldn't be televised from the 1920s anyway, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
The
that
next
was
tie is next
before.
is 6-2, 7-2. Uh, the the Kansas City Cowboys defeated the Hartford Blues in 1926, 7-2. I didn't know the Kansas City Cowboys would be an NFL team.
Yeah, there was a Cowboys baseball team at one time.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember that, but I remember reading about that. Uh,
Yeah, there was an article on the wall at Chapels in
hmm,
North Kansas City about the Kansas City Cowboys.
yeah, the 1926 Kansas City Cowboys in the NFL finished 8-3, fourth in the league that year in terms of record. They actually started out 1-3 and then finished 8-3.
It's a good way to finish,
Yeah. The,
winning all
well,
the
their
games.
range of scores actually was more than the Chiefs because although their highest scoring total of the season was 22, they had some zeros that they scored. They were shut out three times. So, but whenever they scored points, they won the game. So they only could be beaten if they were shut out.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
So
think
they
what led us into this discussion was about unpredictability in the NFL.
yeah yeah
But
sure
we
yeah.
actually managed to do okay in week 17 though, didn't we?
Yeah, we each on our locks of the week, I believe we each finished 2-1. And on the big board, I believe we each finished in the positive money at least a little bit. So we were able to predict in the aggregate and in this our specific locks of the week fairly well. I think week 18 is going to be different because of the oddities of who's going to play, how long are they going to play, what do teams have to play for, kind of
Right.
questions.
And which will vary between now and game time even because some teams will be eliminated possibly after the week has started,
Yeah.
which makes it even, they may have something to play for like as of right now, but as of
Mhm.
game time for their game, they may not have anything to play for. And that may change dramatically. Like the lines may have like dramatic changes as the week progresses,
Yeah. Like,
even as the day of the games progresses. So
mhm. And speaking of unpredictability, like we
unpredictable.
said, we were each 2-1, but we were both way, way off in our one defeats. So should you want to talk about those first?
Our loud wrong answers, yes.
Yes. Our uh, locks of the week, our doors were just left wide open in these locks of the week.
Right.
Um, for our homes to be ransacked, our belongings to be uh, taken by any passerby with a, greedy thought in their hearts could have easily removed all of our valuables with these locks of the week being so non-existent.
Who
Um,
was the loudest wrong? Who was
well, it
the
depends on
most
how you want to
the
do it. I think
wrongest?
I predicted. I'll go through. I'll go mine first, and you can decide. Uh,
Okay.
the well, because you had an over under, I had a spread, so they're kind of different in terms of
Yeah.
how wrong they can be. I predicted Dallas would be able to keep it close at least against Philadelphia because Philadelphia was starting Kenny Pickett. I believe uh, Kenny Pickett actually was. Um, injured the previous week as well, so there was some question about his availability. And so, like, was Drew Lock going to play as the quarterback for the Eagles? Not Drew Lock. What's his name? Ian Book.
Oh,
Ian Book, the former Chiefs uh, training camp quarterback. Ian Book this year.
yes.
Was he going to play for the Eagles? I don't know why I confused Ian Book and Drew Lock, but I guess they have similar. It's kind of similar, short. Both of their names are both too short to survive in the NFL as well.
They both
Uh,
spent time in Kansas City, since Drew
yes,
Lock is from Kansas City and Ian Book was on the
played
practice squad,
practice squad in Kansas City. Yes,
I guess. So
yeah, and according to Bo Nix corollary, they each have names that are too short to be solid NFL quarterbacks.
right.
Ian Book only 7 letters. Drew Lock
Precludes their success.
only 8 letters. So Bo Nix so far is bucking that trend, but we'll see what happens. Uh,
By defying all logic to
yeah,
an illogical argument.
he must be hiding some letters secretly somewhere.
Must be.
Um,
Must be.
but
Strategic reserve somewhere.
but back to Dallas, Philadelphia. I predicted Philadelphia or Dallas to stay within 7.5 of Philadelphia because I thought, well, Cooper Rush has been playing okay. Dallas has been playing kind of okay lately. Philadelphia, it won't matter to them. Uh, but Philadelphia ended up winning 41-7, so they won by 34. Uh, and that's a 26.5 point difference that I lost by. So I lost by almost 4 touchdowns in that game. So that was a blowout in terms of how good my lock of the week was. So I was way, way off on that one. What was your woeful prediction of the week?
Well, it turns out that yours is actually better than mine. So
Ooh,
if that makes you feel better, I guess. I had the Indianapolis Colts and the New York Giants in a low scoring game under 40 and a half points. Final score in that game was 45-33, which is 78 points, which is 37 and a half points over, which is 5 full touchdowns plus a field goal beyond what the prediction was. So I was very, very wrong there. Like, you were
yes.
only 4 touchdowns off. I was more than 5 touchdowns off in a prediction. So
Yeah, we
uh,
can't get them all.
I definitely did not expect the Giants to put up points like that. And that was Drew Lock
That was Drew Lock. Maybe that's why I
that
was
played in that one.
that's
So
maybe that's why I was thinking of Drew Lock because you had the Drew Lock game where I think he had 4 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown um,
that's
in that
not
game.
what either of us would have guessed.
It,
But
former also
you
speaking of
didn't make
Chiefs,
it a lock. I made it a lock of the week. So I am very wrong here.
so Drew Lock, it should have been the Drew Lock of the week.
Yeah.
But speaking of former Chiefs practice squad members, Emir Smith-Marset for the Giants had a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown and became the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week because of
Nice.
the return. But we were each way off on one, but we were correct on two. My first so I had my other one of my other games was Minnesota versus Green Bay and a spread that kind of vacillated as the week went on. I got a good number, I think, because Minnesota was actually 1.5 point underdogs at one point against Green Bay. And they ended up winning that game 27-25. Green Bay actually came back to make it closer, I think, than it really was. Um, Minnesota was in control most of the game, if I remember correctly. Minnesota won 27-25, so they won by 2 outright. So that was a 3.5 point victory for me there. Um, and now Minnesota has played its way into a 14-2 record, the same record as the Detroit Lions. And in week 18, those two teams will be fighting for the number one seed in the NFC. Do you think, and Green Bay will still be a playoff team, although I think they are penciled into the 7 seed most likely. Uh,
Hmm.
at possibly 12-5, which is a pretty good 7 seed in the NFC. But
But that Minnesota Detroit game is the Monday night game too, so it is not. It's in the premier
it's the
game of
Sunday
the
night
week.
game. Sunday
Oh,
night game.
yes, it's the equivalent of the Monday night game. Yes, yes, yes. They don't play Monday night though, so it's the final game of the year.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
important thing.
Yeah, and the
It's the
winner will be
last
the
game
number
of the
one
season.
seed, and the loser will be the number 5 seed. Have to go on the road, most likely to Tampa. And I could see the loser
Or
lose
or or Atlanta, I guess, right?
or Atlanta technically. Yeah, I could
The
see the
only
loser.
other team that can make it.
I could see Tampa winning that game. I couldn't see. I don't see Atlanta possibly winning
Yeah.
that game against. But yeah, I would say like if especially if Detroit because they're so injured, if they lost that game to um they lost if they lost that game to Minnesota. I believe Detroit's already lost to Tampa this year. That was one of their what was one of their defeats. Um, so I could see them losing at Tampa again.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because Detroit
so
is like more injured than they were
yeah,
early in the
yeah,
season
and they
too.
won't get the
So
bye week off to get a little healthier. They'd have
yeah.
to go into it. So yeah, that game means a lot. Um,
If Tampa's had a really strange season though. Like they beat the Lions in week 2, and then they lost to the Broncos badly the next week. Then they beat the Eagles, and then they lost to the Falcons.
yeah, they
So
lost twice to the Falcons. Yeah, the Tampa's been very strong, kind of up and down, but very strong when they've been on. Um, Speaking of on, what was your second what was your first victory in your locks of the week? What was your second
successful
your
lock
first?
that actually functioned.
Yes.
Uh, Second game I had was I had the over in the Carolina Tampa Bay games, as we just mentioned.
Mhm.
Tampa Bay. Uh, I think the previous week I picked this over because both teams had been very good at hitting overs on the season, playing each other. I thought it would be very likely that they would combine for enough points to hit the over in that one too. And the final score on that one was one-sided, but Tampa Bay ended up winning 48-14, which is 62 points, which is well over the 47.5 point line. So that one was much easier there, I guess, for victory than what we saw from the other. They were picking the under in a game of teams that aren't expected to score many points, and sometimes that happens. Where teams just outscore any kind of prediction they're in. But 48-14 Tampa Bay, Mike.
Yes. Yes. So that wasn't yeah, so you were correct on that one. Um, and yeah, I think Tampa Bay, yeah, they really yeah, it seems like Carolina I thought would have put up more of a fight because they've been playing better lately, but Tampa Bay just really stomped them. So um, speaking of stompings, I had my third lock of the week. My second successful one was Buffalo minus 8.5 versus the New York Jets. Uh, that game was a 40-14 Buffalo win, which actually probably wasn't even as close as 40-14 the way that game turned out. I think believe the 14 Aaron Rodgers was out when I believe the 14 points were scored. He was benched in favor of Tyrod Taylor.
Hmm.
But yeah, 40-14 was the final. And so Buffalo won by 26 when they were favored by 8.5 at home against Buffalo. So Buffalo is effectively locked because of that win. They locked up the number 2 seed in the playoffs. So they um, really don't have a whole lot to play for this coming week against New England. So that'll be interesting to see what they do in that game, whether Josh Allen plays or how much he plays, things like that. But yeah, Buffalo really took it to the Jets, 40-14. So that was my second lock of the week. That was correct. So I was 2-1. And you finished 2-1 as well, Dr. Scaff. What was your second victory of the week?
One quick note though for Aaron Rodgers in that last game though, he did become the all-time most sacked quarterback in NFL history. Are you impressed by that stat?
Well, you have to have a lot of longevity to
Yeah.
be the most sacked quarterback. So it's one of those things that's like also like throwing the most interceptions in a NFL career. It's
Yeah.
or like
It's usually related to throwing the most passes
yeah.
also.
Like
Yeah.
Cy Young has the most losses of any pitcher, I believe,
Yeah.
in Major League Baseball history. He also has the most wins. So it's one of those things where it's just a
Yeah.
volume counting stat. So you have to be pretty good to uh,
Right.
last long enough to throw that many interceptions. So um, or like the I don't know who's the career strikeout leader in terms of hitting. Um,
So as a on the offensive side.
yeah,
Ooh. Oh. Yeah, it's gonna be somebody that's pretty good, had a really long career. It's not gonna be Tony Gwynn, because he like
no.
never struck out, so right. It won't be like an Ichiro, because he didn't strike out very much either. But it could be. It's going to be one of those power hitters that has a decent average, probably. Maybe even like a Bonds type or something.
Okay. So it is so the top two are Hall of Fame players in Major League Baseball history for strikeouts.
Yeah.
Uh, the top four out of the top five, actually six out of the top, five out of the top six are um, probably would be Hall of Famers if not for steroids.
Mm. So
So
now we're talking about like McGuire, and that's a possibility.
McGuire is, I don't see him on,
Oh,
not top 20,
that's pretty good. Because
but
he was around for a long time. He did play
yeah,
pretty long.
my computer's being slow again. Let me,
Yeah.
but Sammy Sosa is in the top five in
Okay.
strikeouts, as is Alex Rodriguez.
Really?
Yeah, Sammy Sosa is fourth, Alex Rodriguez is fifth, Reggie Jackson is number one, 2,597 strikeouts. Jim Thome is two. Uh, then Adam Dunn is number three.
Oh, yeah. All right.
He just never hit a home run every time.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's the
so
most? Who's the most recent? Who's the most? Who's the highest on the list as an active player?
one in the top, or two in the top 18, uh, one in the top nine, and he has connections uh, to the New York Yankees, just like Reggie Jackson. Uh, he also played in the playoffs against the Royals this season.
Hmm. I have somebody picture, but I can just am not coming up with the right name.
Uh,
But
Giancarlo Stanton is the number one
that's not
strikeout,
who I was thinking of.
uh, current strikeout leader with 1,963.
Just thinking of
Uh,
another one of those, the three outcome hitters, the
mhm.
walk, strikeout, or home run guys.
And Stanton,
Um,
and Freddie Freeman, number 50. So World Series hero Freddie Freeman uh, is number 50 on the all-time strikeout list.
oh, we've got some years left to go still.
Yeah. And the late Ricky Henderson, I think, was number 47. So,
Wow.
but anyway, uh, all-time sack leader, Aaron Rodgers.
So
So we we finished 2-1 each.
yeah, I did not tell you what my last
What are
lock was though.
what is your last block, Dr. Scaff? I got sidetracked.
My last lock was in the Monday night game. I had Detroit when covering the 3.5 point spread, which they did against San Francisco in San Francisco. 40-34 was the final. Closer game than I would have guessed. Detroit's defense not great in that game either, but neither was San Francisco. So uh, Detroit did end up, winning by 6, covering the 3.5 point spread. So that was my final lock. Bring me to 2-1 on the season on the week, as you were also 2-1. You have a massive advantage on the season. Have won the season series already. You were sitting now at 31-20, Mike. Up $1,100 on the year. And I'm 3 games under 500 at 23-26. So I have 1 week, the most unpredictable week, to get back to 500 for the year. I have to sweep the last week.
You could it'll be 26,
Unless
26, and 2 with your
that's right. Yes. And 2.
um yeah, so we'll see what we'll talk about our locks of the week um for week 18 later in the show. Uh Anything else in the NFL for week 17 do we want to talk about, or should we move on to call it, or do you want to move on to baseball? We've been talking about baseball a little bit. Do you want to talk about a little bit about the Royals?
Sure. Yeah, I think we had just kind of an interesting article pop up, I think, this week on Royals Review. I think you and I are typically relatively avid readers, but maybe we've waned a bit in the off season. But there was a
Mhm.
recent article with predictions for the season from Max Reaper.
Yes.
I wanted to run by some of these predictions, see what you thought was likely to happen, maybe could happen, or definitely will not happen. You can just
Okay.
give me your you can give me your quick evaluation of what you think of these scenarios. First prediction is Royals add a bat, but it will be a young, unproven hitter.
I th
Likely, not likely. Eh,
I think
somewhere in the
it's
middle.
likely, but I also think it's likely that the Royals will add like a kind of crummy older veteran, like they usually do. Somebody who's a proven hitter, but somebody who's proven not to be a very good hitter.
Yes.
I think there'll be some washed up vets that are also added. So it's
So you
hard
think
to say.
that's more likely than they pick an unproven hitter?
I think so. They might trade. Sometimes they'll trade for somebody that's unproven. Uh,
Yeah.
but usually as a free
But
agent,
this doesn't specify
yeah.
how they acquire them. It just
Yeah,
says,
they'll get another Garrett
we'll
Hampson,
add
or
a bat. It'll be a young, unproven hitter. That's the only.
yeah, it'll be another one of those types of players, I think. But I'd say more likely aging, washed up, kind of never was great player.
Yeah. Well, they'll sign at least 3 of those guys to minor league deals that will end up somehow like having great springs and they'll make the roster. But
Yeah, who
even though
will
they
be
probably shouldn't.
Adam Frazier or Garrett Hampson of this season?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Or will they bring them back
Mhm.
themselves, not just the Adam Frazier type, but the Garrett Hampson type? They'll actually be Adam Frazier or Garrett Hampson. All right. So you think it's somewhat likely, but more likely that they pick up an aging, washed
Yes,
up
I'd say
bat.
that. Yeah.
Okay. The second prediction is the outfield will remain pretty much unchanged. You think that's likely or unlikely?
Unfortunately, I think it's probably likely. I think they have a good defensive outfield. They don't have a good offensive outfield.
Right.
I guess maybe if Melendez hits, he's not a great defensive player, but he's getting better at least. But he
Yeah.
really needs to improve the plate to be worth putting in the lineup. So,
Yeah.
um, and I don't know if they're ready to give up on Melendez yet. So
But this is one that I'm not sure will be correct though, because it seems like relatively likely that Massey or uh, India will end up playing in the outfield because they're not
that's true.
both going to be playing second base. I mean, if they platoon them at second, I think they've already lost the season and they should just not even play the year if they end up platooning those 2 guys at second. I think one of them will end up in the outfield, which will make it like fundamentally different from last year. But maybe offensively it will be relatively equivalent,
And
even
you
if
have
they do
yeah,
that.
And I could see Michael Garcia playing some second too, like he has before. So
Yeah, it's
he
possible.
might be more of a second baseman than a third baseman as well. Um, but yeah, so it's yeah, I could see them moving, shuffling some infielders to the outfield. Like I'd say they don't add a lot of outfielders, but they might shuffle some of their own players to the outfield.
Yeah, that's
I think
possible.
so. Yeah.
Next up, Royals send 4 players to the All-Star game.
I think they said how many they sent 4 players in 2024, so maybe they will. If they have a good team. Witt, is probably a lock. Um, maybe
Sal's a perennial favorite of
Al, yeah.
voters.
Cole Reagans maybe will be back. Lugo could be back. Um,
Now they
maybe.
have a decent closer though too in Ursek, so
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
possibility.
And yeah, maybe. I don't I don't think any of their outfielders are going to be all stars.
Probably
Uh,
not.
so it would need probably at least 2 pitchers to get to 4. So I don't know. I don't know if they'll get 4. Um, that's a lot. I'll
You think
say
relatively unlikely? Is
I'll
that how you're leaning?
say 30% likelihood of getting 4 again.
Yeah, I would say this one's pretty unlikely. Maybe, but maybe more. I don't know. I think maybe the next one's even more unlikely. From my perspective, is my guess, at least anyway. So we'll see how you rank them against each other here. Is that Royals' most recent first round draft pick, Jack Caglione, will be in the big leagues by the end of the year.
I hope that's true because I think he's somebody that could play in the outfield and be a um, power bat. If he makes it to the major leagues by the end of the year, that would be fantastic, and I guess that would mean that he is, he was a polished college bat. He played pretty well in the minors this past season, I believe. So, and his
All
short minor,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
If he gets there that fast, that would be amazing. I don't know if that's going to happen, but um,
Yeah.
I'd say that's about the same likelihood as is in the last one, maybe 30%.
Yeah.
If
I
that's,
think
I
I
think
think
that's
I think I
generous.
would much lower on both of those, but I think the
Yeah.
Caglione one is even lower than the 4 All-Stars. But I think there's almost no chance the Caglione would make it. That's because it would. I mean, if you had to think about how terrible the season would have to be for Caglione to get called up, though, like they'd have to be like they'd have to be in real bad shape, I would think.
Well,
For
he could also be raking and just they just want to put him in the lineup. Um,
yeah,
if he's hitting a 400 in AAA or something, what are you going to do?
right,
Um,
yeah, but that's even somewhat unlikely
yeah.
anyway, because he was at high A, I think is how far he got last year, which is
Hmm.
great for a young player. His first season in the minors to get to high. He's already passed the previous year's first round draft pick, the high school catcher Blake Mitchell. So he is, gonna probably get to the majors faster than
Hmm.
2023's first round draft pick. But next year seems unlikely though to me. Next on this list of predictions, the Royals extend Salvador Perez. Do you think the Royals will pick up additional years of Sal's contract?
He's old, so I don't know how much longer they're gonna have him. Maybe they could restructure or something and maybe have him longer for less money or something like that.
So he's
Um,
in the fourth year of his 4-year guaranteed part of his contract, but there's a $13.5 million club option for 2026. Apparently, that's so it's not a huge number, but that it's a declining number at least anyway. But the options would be picked up, I guess, is what the prediction
okay, I
is.
could see the options getting picked up, especially with Fermin, I think playing more
Yeah.
catcher and maybe um possibly Blake Mitchell at some point
Oh,
becoming
sorry. What they're saying is that they actually make a new deal that would add a year is what the prediction here is that they take the
one
two
year.
they take the two option years that are left and then make it a 3 year deal is what plus and then add 1 year. So that's what this guy what Max Reaper was talking about in this. Sorry.
Maybe. I think 3. I guess if he's already got two options, adding
Yeah.
another year is not the worst. But yeah, Salvi's getting old. I don't know if the Rose want him to play for any other team.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he'd be approaching 40 probably by the end of that. So
Yeah, if they added the 3 years, then it would be they said he'd be like 38, 39 years old when the deal would expire. 2027, I guess.
yeah. So yeah, that's probably when he would probably retire or
But
get close to it. Um, Yeah, maybe they could keep him. Maybe they would as a veteran and maybe as a part-time catcher, part-time DH, part-time first baseman. Um, he could still, still got some power. Uh, good, good at handling a pitching staff. So,
yeah,
but you don't want to probably catch every game because that'll wear him down.
right.
Uh,
That one seems relatively likely, actually, right? This may be the most
yeah,
likely
so far, yeah.
of the predictions so far. Maybe.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. How about the Royals win 92 games and win the division?
Ooh, that's a lot of wins. They won, was it 86 this year? They should have won a lot more, I think,
Yes.
according to their run differential.
Yep.
But 92 is a lot. I don't know if I'd pick 92. I could see them winning about the same number of games, maybe a little bit more, but I could also see them regressing a little bit because we were both very surprised they ended up making the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
So I could easily see a step back, especially
I think
because,
we both had the under, I think, on their season
yeah,
win total in the mid 70s.
yeah, and we had, you know, the AL Central had two wild card teams, which was unusual. And you think that the AL East, with the Red Sox, you think are going to be better probably. The Rays weren't in the playoffs either.
Right.
Um, maybe another team out west. Maybe you know the the Mariners played fairly well, or the Astros were. I think the Rangers might bounce back. So
Yeah.
I don't know if the Royals will make the playoffs. I would be pleasantly surprised if they made the playoffs, but I would say it's less than a 50-50 shot to make it again. Maybe 2 years from now, I think when some of the younger guys are coming along, maybe if Caglione is playing well and some of the pitching and stuff, they could be I would be I don't see him 92 wins. I would say somewhere in the 80s.
Yeah.
Uh either around 500, which might not make the playoffs, to uh higher 80s, which could, and conceivably I guess could win the division with 80,
Yeah.
88, 89 wins, something like that.
Yeah, we have a relatively unpredictable division anyway.
Yeah,
So we've always talked about it, like you don't necessarily have to win, even 90 games to win the division. So it's not, if they're in the same area, 85, 86, 87, that could be enough to win the
yeah,
division title. It's possible. All right. How about so relatively unlikely is what you're saying that all of that prediction is correct.
yeah, relatively unlikely, but not impossible.
Right. How would you compare that to the Royals announcing a downtown ballpark at Washington Square Park?
That is the site near Union Station, if I'm correct.
Yes.
That's where they've been looking lately. I think that would be a good location.
A little
I
bit
don't
of a
know.
tight squeeze, but it's
A tight squeeze.
possible.
And it's one of the places where there'd be kind of a skyline to look at. It's next to, you could also say, well, maybe mass transit could go there because it's next to the train station. The streetcar goes
Which
to
is where the streetcar already is.
those, but you would think maybe they could schedule, like, if there was such thing as commuter rail in Kansas City, that would be a great
Yes.
idea. Like,
What's the streetcar now goes from the River Market to basically that location at Union Station.
yeah,
But in another year it's going to be all the way down to the plaza too. So UMKC is the other end point of it. So
Okay.
you would have plaza to River Market with the stadium being like in the middle. So in theory, parking anywhere along the streetcar line gets you a ride to down to the park from
Yeah.
wherever you park.
It seems like they'd have to add a lot of street cars during the games. I don't know if they have that
Possibly.
many
Right.
vehicles um, to do that.
The physical cars themselves, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that's a bad spot. I guess it's probably easier to go there than the Crossroads because it's um,
Well, the other location that's currently being bandied about is like in Overland Park. So
I'd hope it was
uh,
there instead of Overland Park. Yeah,
yes, yeah, right. And I guess they could talk about the original site that they talked about, which was like around like 10th Street,
yeah. The East Village.
east of
Whatever happened to
92.
that?
It's after we looked at how other stadiums are like oriented, it doesn't make sense to be there because it's not going to have the skyline
Yeah,
uh in the stadium shot, the stadium view. So I don't think it's going to be a good spot. Plus, they'd have to build, and I think the team was going to have to, build an entertainment district around it. And it seems like they've
yeah.
gotten away from that concept. They don't want to do that anymore. So they want to put it close to parking, close to an entertainment district that already exists, and call that like their successful move,
I
which
see.
is lazy and
So
cheap
they are.
on
So the
on
NKC
ownership's
Pro
part.
Bowl is no longer also an option.
It's unlikely, but it seems like they're looking more on the Kansas side than they are anywhere else, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
but it does seem like the Kansas City mayor is and Lucas is looking for a solution that doesn't require another vote, which is what they're trying to like bypass Jackson County
Mm.
voting for on a tax, so that the Washington Square Park apparently they figured out some way they can get around
Oh, okay.
having go to a vote, but other communities won't have to do that. So that's where the downtown park, if that's the dream that they want, then they're gonna do what they have to do to get downtown. And it seems like that's the site they're gonna do. But if they're willing to go outside of there, they're gonna get more money probably from the state of Kansas because they just throw money at everything, even though they don't care if it ever pays off because that's how Kansas operates.
Yeah.
They're
Well, let's hope that they get
It's a
that.
disgusting state, Mike. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about this, but the state of Kansas is awful.
Well, I hope they get that. I hope they get it down. If they're determined to move from where they are, I hope they get to downtown at least
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's
I
all they've
guess
been
that
talking about is downtown. So
that's technically not downtown in Crown Center, but it's what would that be? Midtown? Would you just call that Midtown? It's not really even Midtown, is it? What would
no,
Crown?
not really. Yeah. But
It's
Washington
just
Square Park, I think you would still call that downtown. I think, but
maybe the south end of downtown.
yeah, Crown Center area, I guess. I don't know,
Yeah.
somewhere that. All right. The final prediction though in this article though, Bobby Witt Jr. wins the MVP award.
Well, I think if the Royals win 92 games, maybe Bobby Witt Jr. would be the MVP. Um, so he'd
Yes,
have to have a season very similar to what he's having now or had this year, which is possible.
yeah,
And also probably hope for a down year, from, Aaron
Aaron
Judge
Judge.
or
Right.
if Mike Trout, stays healthy for once, and, you know,
In
something like
recent
that.
times, yeah.
Yeah. Or there are some other players that could play really, really, well for the um, you know, Red Sox or Yankees or somebody.
Well, it may help Bobby Witt by having Juan Soto go to the National League, which is where he's headed. So
It's true.
that takes
Otani
away
is
a
in the
weapon
National League.
from protecting Aaron Judge in the lineup for the Yankees. So maybe that is already a help
Yeah.
for Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? That's possible. I don't think it's I'd say maybe 20% chance of Witt winning the MVP. He was second this year, so he's one of the top contenders, but it's very difficult to win the MVP.
Yeah,
Even so it's especially difficult to predict who's going to get it because even George Brett, Hall of Famer, only won one MVP his entire career.
yeah.
So um,
He won batting titles multiple times in different
Mhm.
decades.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's not enough to win multiple MVPs. So
no, he probably should have won in '85 the MVP when the Royals went to the World Series. He basically carried that team
yeah,
offensively anyway to the postseason. Um, but they gave it to Don Mattingly because he had more RBIs basically. And that was when RBIs were a big, big, big stat. They thought that those were the king of uh, stats. He had more home runs too, but on base percentage, slugging percentage, WAR was um, going to be uh, Brett in that one. But yeah, so those are interesting. I think interesting predictions. A couple of them, I think at least probably will come true. I don't know about all of them. I guess the one I'd most want to come true is actually the Royals moving to that downtown site because I don't want them to be in Kansas.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I don't want either.
That might be the one that we're both hoping for the most, but
Yeah,
it really has nothing to do with the team itself, right? It's about the things around the team.
yeah. Um,
All right.
how about moving on to college football?
Yes.
We just concluded the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Um, should we go through those games real quick and just say we each made bets on the quarterfinals? Um, uh, Penn State was 10.5 point favorites over Boise State, and Penn State won that game in the Fiesta Bowl 31-14. So they covered the spread. Um, I picked Boise State to cover. You picked Penn State, so you got that one correct. I missed it. Um, we both predicted Arizona State to cover the spread against the Texas Longhorns. Arizona State lost a turned out to be a very close game, 39-31 in overtime, double overtime. So they finished with an eight, even though Texas did score 8 points to win the touchdown in overtime. They didn't cover the 13 and a half points. So we each got that one. So you were 2-0. I'm 1-1.
Yeah, and
Going into
that game had a weird like officiating call like late in the fourth quarter. Did you watch that one, the Arizona
I
State
didn't get a
Texas
chance to
game?
watch much of it. I saw some of the early parts of it. I didn't see the end of it.
There was a very late call with like a minute to go where Texas had what probably should have been called a targeting penalty, but they waved it off. Like
Hmm.
they reviewed it. When the head official went under the into the review booth, looked at it, ended up not calling that. It basically ended up giving the teams like a fighting chance to win rather than basically if they called the targeting, Arizona State was gonna have like a first down at like the Texas 30 with like a minute to go, so they probably could have run a couple plays and they kick a field goal to win it, perhaps,
Hmm.
as opposed to what ended up happening was they basically went to overtime as a result of it.
That's
So then
too bad.
they, both teams had like a fighting chance to win the game by not calling targeting. So it seemed like they actually made the call more about not wanting to decide the outcome of the game, even though it was clearly
Hmm.
it was like a textbook targeting penalty. The receiver was defenseless, crown of the helmet to the face mask of the defenseless receiver, and they did not. They showed the replay. They're like, yeah, they're gonna call that, and then they said no targeting, which was
Huh.
very shocking. But
Interesting.
yeah, weird play though.
That's too bad. I wanted Arizona State to win that one outright, probably. But
For us, it seemed like the spread was going to be fine. Like we were pretty safe already at that point. Like Arizona State had a tie game. They fought back in the fourth quarter to tie it up. It was like if it's going to overtime, they're not going to get to the 14 point requirement to
yeah,
for Texas to cover the spread. So we were in good shape. So it didn't really matter the outcome. We didn't care, right? We just wanted to see Arizona State cover,
that's true. That's
which is fine,
true.
and they did. So we got that. We both got it.
And we also both got Ohio State -2.5 versus Oregon. Ohio State, my favorite to win the whole thing, is actually looking that way right now. They really dominated Oregon and they won 41-21, but it was maybe not even that close. They kind of let their foot off the gas at about halftime when they were up 34-0, and then I guess 34-7 at the half. But
Yeah.
they were made, they really manhandled Oregon. So Ohio State, which lost to Michigan and didn't even make the Big Ten championship game, is with and Ryan Day was they were thinking that he was going to get fired because they lost to Michigan. Um, and some people have said he's the only thing that can save his job is winning the national championship. Right now, Ohio State has the inside track, I think, to win. They're going to play Penn State. Uh, they would play. They're going to play Texas uh, in um, in the semifinals, right? Uh, and
Yeah, I believe so.
and Penn State, I believe, will be playing Notre Dame,
Yeah.
who beat Georgia today, uh, 23-10. Georgia without their, with Gunnar Stockton, is that his name?
Right. Yeah. Yes.
As the quarterback instead of Carson Beck. They didn't score very many points. They had, I think there was a crucial drop at the end of the game too, but they could have come back. But they lost 23-10. So Georgia was actually favored by 1.5. We both put Georgia as our favorite. So um, you were 3-1, but however, you actually had Georgia as your team to go all the way. So they've been
Right.
knocked, the champions have been knocked out by the Fighting Irish, who I thought would probably kind of roll over and not play very well because they usually don't play well in these big games. But
Right.
now the game is in the semifinals. Maybe they wait till the semifinals to, to be poor, um, like they have in the previous college football playoffs when they've made the top four. So, um, yeah, Notre Dame will be playing Penn State, uh, and Oregon is playing. I mean, not Oregon. Ohio State is playing Texas.
Mm.
Uh, So you were 3-1 in your picks. So you are now
Yeah.
7-1 on your first 8 games. So plus 600. I am 3-5, -200. Although I do have my plus 500 Ohio State pick still alive. You don't have your champion alive. So it's still
Right.
possible that I may, at least finish in the positive territory. Um,
Yes. Depending how these last three games go too. So,
that's how 3 games go. Um,
but I can
right
be a
now,
jerk and just make sure I pick the same games that you do, so you
yeah.
can't. Or I
You
can
could. I
freeze you
could
out,
probably gonna pick
basically.
the same ones. Right now, Notre Dame and Penn State. Those two games, yeah, that game is fairly close on the spread. Penn State is 1.5 point underdogs to Notre Dame, and then Ohio State is 5.5 point favorites over Texas. Um, I'm leaning. I was leaning against Penn State. I thought they would win the first 2 games, but I thought the other teams would cover because they were pretty big spreads. Here, I think Penn State's still going to win over Notre Dame. Um, I don't think. Yeah, so if they win outright, they're going to cover. So um, I
Right.
would say I'm leaning Penn State to win um, against Notre Dame plus, so cover one plus 1.5, and then I think I'm going to go, of course, with Ohio State to win and cover uh, uh, -5.5 points as well. So that would be the two ways that I'd be leaning uh, in the semifinals,
We
which are
do have another week to make these picks officially. So I think right now we're just gonna say where we're leaning, and I think the next week's episode we'll have our official picks, I believe,
okay.
unless we have a delayed recording schedule, which has happened recently.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I think as of now, yeah, it's hard to not go with Ohio State, who's been like completely dominant in their first two games. So that one, I think we're going to agree there. I've been betting on Penn State, so it'd be weird if I didn't continue that trend. And I'm not sure that Notre Dame actually, had much of a test with a maybe broken Georgia team. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if we know how good Notre Dame actually is. Penn State's been playing pretty well. Although I don't want to see a Penn State Ohio State final. That sounds terrible.
Mhm.
That's
Would you rather see Ohio
uh,
State, Notre Dame?
not really. but I don't like
Texas,
Texas either. So this is
Texas
one of those
A&M.
things like where this is gonna maybe a collection of teams that nobody actually likes except the people that went to those schools, and they seem to be like teams that are disliked by many outside of those.
I would be somewhat happy, even though I like Arkansas. I would be somewhat happy if the SEC was shut out of the championship,
That's
which
fine,
I think
yeah.
would be kind of funny, given the fact that everybody thinks the SEC was like, is always the best conference.
Right.
This year, I think it was the Big Ten was probably the best conference, and
Mhm.
it's kind of proving that
Certainly
so
looking
far.
that way right now.
Yeah. And Texas really wasn't an SEC team until this year. They were just a, Johnny come lately Big 12 team. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, so those are our leanings. I think we'll have our official picks next week.
yeah,
Unless we record late, in which these will become our official picks
that's right. Yeah,
retroactively.
retroactively. Yes. Well,
Like if
proactively, we want to talk about week 18 of the NFL schedule, the
yes.
week where, many teams have their playoff positions already locked in, whether they're in the playoffs or out of the playoffs. And that means that there's very little to play for some of these teams, including the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a 15-1 record. They've locked up the number one seed thanks to their victory um, over the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-10 in week 17. So it seems like Carson Wentz is going to get the start at quarterback. Probably Chris Jones, probably Travis Kelce, probably a lot, maybe some of the line is offensive line, defensive line uh, is not going to play or doesn't play, isn't going to play very much. I've also heard that Chris Oladokun may get some time at quarterback as well. Chiefs want to rest. They'll get about 3 weeks of rest before their next game. Um,
Yeah, really.
and so, what do you think? And then they're playing the Denver Broncos, who desperately need to win uh, to make the playoffs. At least, most likely, if there is a couple of possibilities that if they lose, as long as Miami loses and Cincinnati lose as well, Denver
Right.
could make the playoffs. But Miami is going to be playing contemporaneously with uh, the Broncos, so that they won't know at the beginning of the game whether they can coast or not. Um,
Yeah, they
so
won't be in the scenario like Pittsburgh will know if they have a shot at the winning their division, depending on what Baltimore does in the game immediately
the
before it.
Saturday games, yeah.
And yeah,
Two
so
Saturday games. Yeah.
yeah.
The AFC North is all playing Saturday.
It's unfortunate that those two games aren't concurrent, though. Also, because you don't want them to know the outcome. A lot of like the Major League Baseball, they make the division games like play at the same time, so they don't know who wins
Well,
ahead of time.
I think, yeah, they want Saturday games they want ratings. I think that's more important for them. They want
Yes.
people to watch the games. Sunday games, they have a couple windows. So like the Broncos and the Dolphins are kind of competing, so they play at the same time or things like that. So, but the Chiefs are actually 10.5 point underdogs because the Broncos are fighting for a playoff spot, and the Chiefs don't need to. They also aren't, it's not like if they were 16-0, maybe they'd be fighting for a perfect season, but they're 15-1, so there's not a lot to play for other than pride, or Carson Wentz maybe wants to have a good showing so he can maybe become a starter in the league again. Um,
He should have
so
most of his wide receiver weapons available though, because they, are likely trying to get a little more reps in before the playoffs for especially for players that were injured early in the year, like
yeah.
Hollywood Brown.
And DeAndre Hopkins has, I believe, some money incentives. If he gets certain, I think if he gets certain number of yards and targets and touchdowns, he can get up to $1 million by playing in bonuses by playing well in the Denver game. So, um, yeah, so if you want, maybe we can segue into our locks of the week. Even though I don't know who's going to be playing for the Chiefs or how much they want to win this game, I still think they are not. They're going to keep it somewhat close against Denver. Denver is 10.5 point favorites, which is a lot. Um, and so I don't think Denver is going to cover the 10.5 point spread. I think the Chiefs actually could win it outright. They won outright against the Chargers last year with With Blaine Gabbert starting at quarterback, if I remember correctly, in the final game last year. So um,
Probably not going to be a pretty game.
no, but 10.5 points is a lot of points, and I think the Chiefs will keep it closer. So, and possibly win out. I might even pick the Chiefs on the money line because that could be a lot of. It's a big. I think they're plus 440 right now on the money line, so that could really
Yeah,
save. Really, because I'm trying to finish. We were each trying to finish above 500 on the big board. We didn't really talk about the big board, but we're both less than $1,000 under 500 on the season. So if we have two good weeks in this unpredictable week 18, we could finish even money or higher. So it might pay off to pick some of these upsets, especially if you already think you're going to lose a little bit of money anyway.
right.
You want to try to gain some of that money back. But um, so yeah, the Chiefs 10.5 point underdog. So I'm going to take them at plus 10.5 as my first lock of the week. How about your first lock of the week, Dr. Scaff?
My first lock, I'm going to a team that's pretty good, that's but resting players against a team that's really bad and has no incentive to perform well at all. That's the Buffalo New England game, where as of right now, New England is locked into the number one draft pick. So they really do not want to win this game coming up. So and the line is close. Buffalo is likely to be resting most of the players. Like sounds like Josh Allen may play a few series, but they're as the two seed, they're not going anywhere. So they don't really need to play anybody. But they're 2.5 point favorites at New England, which is a very close line. Apparently, the odds makers are expecting Allen to not play much. Uh, and I'm still going to stick with Buffalo at -2.5. I think the win, they should win by at least a field goal. New England wants to keep that number one draft pick, in my
Yeah.
estimation.
And
So I'm going to take that as my first lock.
and you mentioned that Drake May was injured.
I did not mention that,
You
but that
mentioned
is
that.
true.
You mentioned off the air. I mean, I was going to say you mentioned before we
Yes,
started. You mentioned that Drake May was injured.
he has a
And
hand injury and he had a possible concussion during the last game. So
yeah,
those are two things that aren't great.
you need your hand and your brain as a quarterback. So,
Turns
uh,
out.
yeah. So that could be a good bet. Um, yeah, it's hard, but it's hard to predict who's going to play, who's not going to play. One of my bets, my second lock of the week, is basically based on some of those ideas of incentives to play well, who's going to play, who's not going to play. Brock Purdy of the 49ers had an elbow issue. On the offseason, seemed like maybe Brock Purdy ought to have gotten Tommy John surgery on his UCL. Now his UCL is kind of acting up on him. It seems like there was no tear or anything, but there's maybe something going on there. So the 49ers are shutting him
Inflammation.
down. Um, they're playing at Arizona. Arizona, the Cardinals are favored by 4.5 points. So Kyler Murray probably will start. The 49ers will start Joshua Dobbs as quarterback. And the 49ers, of course, have been decimated by injuries all season. So, you wonder who's going to be playing for them, how much they're going to care. They're not in the playoff hunt. I think Arizona right now, what is Arizona's record?
I had it up earlier, but I don't have it up now.
They might be trying to
It's the same.
uh, finish
Arizona is 7-9, but they've been
seven.
eliminated from the
That's
playoffs
I was
too.
thinking. I was thinking maybe they could finish above 500, but finish closer to 500 at least to have a good start for next season. Also sweep the 49ers for the year, which would be, I think, probably psychologically good for them. So,
Yeah.
um, and I don't think so. 4.5 is a lot of points, but it's at Arizona, so maybe who knows? And I don't think the 49ers have much to play for. I think they're just going to lick their wounds and go into next season and try to bounce back. So Arizona minus 44.5 versus the 49ers is my second lock of the week.
And yeah,
How about
again, it's
yours?
it's very difficult to predict these games because you don't know who's going to play, and you
Yeah.
don't know what the 49ers look like without like any of their players, right? So,
No.
but it seems like a safe bet still. A very depleted, an even more depleted 49ers team who has
Yeah.
not been playing well before, so they probably won't play any better without
Yeah.
even more depletion. My second pick, um, I'm going to go to the Jacksonville Indianapolis game. I did pick Indianapolis in an under last week and failed miserably, but I'm going to stick with them in an under this time against Jacksonville, who's maybe an even weaker offensive team. The over/under game in this one is higher than the last week's game was for Indianapolis, and I'm sticking with it though. I'm going to take the under in the Jacksonville at Indianapolis game, 45 and a half points.
Hmm. I think that could happen. I'm going to take unders on all the games this week,
Yeah,
as I have been the whole season, basically. Maybe since week 3 of the season, I've been doing all unders. It hasn't
yeah,
turned out so great for me in the over under category, but I don't know if it would be any worse than I would do if I had to pick each of those games. Like I said, I think it's helped me focus more on the
yes,
lines and the money lines. So. I like the under on that game. Yeah, and I think Mr. Michael McCorkle, Mac Jones probably won't score a whole lot of points, but unless maybe he'll explode like Drew Lock um, against the porous Colts defense. We also like you said we don't know, like you said before we went on the air, we don't know who's going to start the quarterback for the Colts. It could be Joe Flacco, it could be Anthony Richardson. And you kind of want Joe Flacco might throw a bunch of interceptions, so they don't, maybe they won't score many points, or Anthony Richardson might just, be Anthony Richardson and not really be able to lead his team to scoring many points because of his passing, he leaves a lot to be desired in the passing department, at least this season. So I can see that being an under game for sure. So yeah, I think that's a decent bet.
yeah. It's going to be an ugly game, I would assume, but I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. It can't be that high scoring 2 weeks in a row, Mike. That's what I'm going with.
No, yeah,
Last week was a fluke. This week they're going to not score like they should have not last week also.
yeah. Well, speaking of kind of ugly games, I think my third lock of the week is another one of these maybe ugly games. This is Carolina at Atlanta. Atlanta desperately needs to win, but they're starting Michael Penix at quarterback. They're facing the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young, who's been playing better this season. Other than last week where they were blown out by the Buccaneers, they've been scoring a lot of points. They've been in games, winning a couple of games here and there. I could actually see Carolina defeating the desperate Falcons, who desperately need to win and have the Buccaneers lose. And sometimes those desperate teams, they lose games that they desperately need to win because, well, they weren't that good to begin with. That's why they're in that position that they are. So I'm going to say Carolina as they're 7.5 point underdogs. I could still see Atlanta winning that game, but 7.5 points is a big spread, a full touchdown and a little bit more. So I'm going to go Carolina plus 7.5 against Atlanta in Atlanta. It's not very far for them to travel. It's maybe a couple hundred miles at most from
Yeah.
Charlotte to Atlanta. So I like Carolina at least to cover. I might actually pick them on the money line as well, just to be spoilers for the Falcons just to see what happens. But I haven't decided on that on the big board yet. But I like Carolina to cover. And they've been fairly good for me the last few weeks when I bet on Carolina. So I'm going to stick with them and make them my third lock of the week.
There were a couple of Mike Werman specials on the board that I thought you might go for, but that you didn't bite on the 17 and a half point spread for Baltimore, or
Yeah,
the extremely high over under number on the Minnesota Detroit game. It's 56 and a half. These are like typical like historical Mike Werman bets that maybe you've gotten away from now. Maybe that's part of your picking evolution over the last couple of years.
yeah,
Are you
I
are
get.
you actively avoiding those those types of lines that used to be your favorites to go for?
I don't know if I will avoid them in my locks of the week. I'll still go under. I mean, in my big board, I'll still go under the
Yes.
56 and a half. And I'm thinking about making, it's going to be a Bailey Zappi led Cleveland Browns team most likely
Right.
against the Ravens. The Ravens want to win that game to win the division. So, but 17 and a half points is a lot of points.
Yeah.
So I'm still not sure which way I'm going to go on that yet. So I'm not going to make it a lock of the week. I think that was the
Yeah.
same, basically the same rationale you had when we were talking before we went on the air. There's a lot of big point spreads. We don't, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, 13 and a half. Tampa Bay is favored by Chicago. Green Bay is also 10 and a half point spread.
Yeah.
Um, uh, which I think, Green Bay doesn't really need that win as much, so maybe Chicago can sneak in there. So I might be tempted to put the Bears, even though the Bears have been terrible and Green Bay's been good. Um, so it's just so unpredictable week 18, and it's one of those things where I don't like any of the bets really, because I don't know who's going to be playing, and it's like a preseason. It's almost like going back to the preseason, making your bets on preseason football, which is something that is maybe a fool's errand. Um,
Yeah.
how about speaking of fool's errands? How about your third lock of the week, Mr. Dr. Scaff?
So my last pick, I'm going to a relatively low over under number with teams that have recently at least been scoring pretty good point totals, uh, which actually may somewhat contradicts my last pick in some way. But the Giants Philadelphia game, which will, as of now, is predicted to be Drew Lock against Tanner McKee at quarterback for
Ooh,
Philly. And Philly is not going to be playing Saquon Barkley, who has a chance at breaking the all-time rushing record this season. But it seems like he is not going to play. He's not going for that record, apparently, in the final
no.
game of the season. But the over-under number for the game is only 37 and a half. The Giants did put up 45 points last week. Drew Lock's playing, which he is expected to play as of now. You know, you'd think they'd be able to score, somewhere in the 20-point range. You'd expect Philly to be able to score somewhere in the 20-point range, even without their top stars. McKee did throw for 2 touchdowns last week, even only throwing 4 passes, but 2 of them were touchdowns. So I think this game's going to outpace the 37 and a half number for the over under. So I'm taking the over in this one. That's my third.
I think that could happen. But I'm going to be going against you, taking the under, like I am
Right.
every game. But that's not very many points, like you said. It's unpredictable. You think, well, Saquon out, the running game and the offense for the Eagles will be down. Plus, they have Tanner McKee, maybe at quarterback at least to start out with. Who knows what the rest of the game is going to be like?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be Jalen Hurts, and
And I think Pickett was injured, I think, in the last game.
so maybe it's going to be Ian Book, like we mentioned,
Possible.
as the other quarterback. Drew Lock played really well. Maybe he's trying to play his way into saying, "Hey, at least keep me around, Giants next year to start the season." Maybe he's thinking, "Well, I can do what Sam Darnold did. I was a fairly highly touted prospect. Got bumped around a little bit, but now I can, you know." Do some things on offense that maybe you didn't think that I could do. He had the big week last week. Maybe he'll try to have a big week this week. So maybe, yeah, against the hated Eagles, the Giants might want to, really come out and play. And they've been better on the road this year than home. So, possibly. Yeah, I can see it as an over. I
Yeah.
can also see it as, well, the Giants are going to be shut out by the Eagles. And or a 13-3 game, something like that too. So I'm still going with the under, but
Yeah.
it's I'm only married to the under because it's because I am picking unders for every game.
Right. And I think the under numbers as a whole have been trending downwards the last couple of weeks, and this is the lowest uh average over under number game for all of the NFL games
Mhm.
combined this week compared to like all of the previous weeks actually going back to quite a ways in the season anyway. So
Yeah.
it's under like 42 points I think is what the average is, and that's being propped up dramatically by that Sunday night Minnesota Detroit matchup where both teams are actually playing for all the marbles, I guess. So that's
Yeah, that's a
is that
big
is that your
game.
game of the week then for like what you're most anticipating for this week?
I'm really most anticipating the Chiefs playing the Broncos, even as I'm such a homer. I just want to see how the Chiefs look without Mahomes as quarterback.
Yeah,
Uh, Wentz does and how the team responds, and if they can kind of keep it close or even beat the Broncos, and that which I think would be funny if they did beat the Broncos. But of the
so
other games, that is, I think, easily the game of the week.
so
And
is that just like your homerism, or is it your disregard of the NFC even at the top?
more homerism. I don't know how good the NFC is. I think if Detroit is on. Like if Detroit wasn't so depleted by injuries on the defensive side, I think
Yeah,
Detroit would be a team that is good enough to beat the top teams in the AFC. I'm not sure the other NFC teams are, um, but I would kind of like Minnesota to win. I think that would be fun. I think Minnesota, because everybody's been talking about Detroit so much this year. Uh, I think seeing Minnesota at the
right.
same come out on top. They lost a very close game to the Lions in Minnesota. Maybe they can return the favor in Detroit. So I don't know which way I'm leaning betting wise, but in terms of fan, I want Minnesota, I think, to win. They're 2.5 point underdogs on the road, which basically means they're evenly matched teams.
Yeah.
So how about you? What are you most looking forward to this coming week?
Uh, but I think maybe it is that game. Yeah, I don't. There are these are mostly like division rival games that we have this last week. Actually, it's all division rivals, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the way the NFL drew it up.
Which is normally is pretty good, but there's just so many teams already have everything locked up. It's kind of unfortunate that the playoffs aren't more of a jumbled mess, and they're more already sort of defined. So it's less exciting probably this last week than we have had in previous seasons, at least down to the wire. But I think that the Minnesota Detroit game should be interesting anyway. It's still hard to care about it because it's
Yeah.
still the NFC. I don't really care about the NFC.
Mhm.
So yes, I think the homerism side of it is interesting, where it's like we'd rather see a preseason Kansas City Chiefs team playing a postseason bound team and seeing if they're equivalent to each other. That is far more interesting to us both.
Yeah.
It's it's odd. It seems odd, doesn't it?
Well, if we were just unbiased NFL reporters, maybe it would seem odd,
Yeah.
but we are the Orange Power Hour centered in, well, if I'm no long even though I'm no longer in Kansas City physically, my sporting heart and brain are centered in Kansas City. So we always had the
Our
Chiefs and
interests.
Royals, uh, number one in our consciousness. So
That's
um,
where your line about our interests lie, where our interests lie, right? Yes.
yes, where they lie. As long as your interests don't conflict with ours, we're happy. But whatever you do. Maybe speaking
Yes.
of interests not conflicting, should we wrap up this episode of the Warning Track Power Hour?
I think it's time.
Yeah, we had some good tangents on NFL scores and on strikeout leaders, things like that. So we ended up going off topic a little bit, which I think I always enjoy here at the Winter Power, the unpredictability of our conversation, our hard-hitting, hair-splitting analysis. You can just really go just about anywhere. And I think we have an example of that this week. And it's one of the things I like about the off season as well, because those seem to be extra rambly and extra weird. So we're approaching the off season, but we have the playoffs in the meantime. So next week we'll talk about the playoff matchups. The Chiefs will not be part of the opening round of the playoffs because they have clinched the first round bye in the AFC. But we'll be talking about the um, other six playoff games in both the NFC and AFC next week. So we'll have that playoff preview. We'll also, perhaps, depending on when we air, have the official college football semifinal preview, although we've really previewed that preview already. It's
Yes.
one of the things where when you see the movie trailer, you already know basically the plot of the whole movie on certain types of trailers. So maybe this is one of those days. But we have that to look forward to. We'll see what happens in the world of baseball if anything crosses our um, cross it catches our attention, and we'll also discuss uh, the week that was week 18 in the NFL and see the aftermath of that and how it led to the playoffs as well, and give results for our season long betting locks of the week, our big board, but also our over-unders on win totals of each of these teams.
That's right.
We'll try to finish better than our woeful results last year, where I believe I was 10 and 22 out of the 32 teams, and Dr. Scaff was
Yes.
12 and 20. So I
Much better.
lost $1,200. He lost $800 on of real fake money that we bet
Yes.
over unders. So we'll see if we can at
Pride,
least
though, Mike.
get
Pride. That's how much pride
close
we
to
lost.
pride. At least we'll get close to 500. We're hoping. So we have all that to look forward to next week. All that and more to look forward to next week, I should say. And we thank you for listening and watching us, our many, many viewers out there. Um, and as always, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast, which is available on many different podcast delivery platforms. Um, we also wish you luck if you are making bets this weekend, as long as your interests do not conflict with ours. On that note, we're welcoming the unpredictable week 18 of the NFL season, and we'll see what happens. So we'll tune in next week to hear all about it here at the One Check Power Hour. So until next time, we'll wish you a good day.